All
Yeah.
right, everybody, welcome to another chat loop. Today we have Faisal, who's going to go over OpenCost, and he's a drummer, and you're going to have a great time. I'll be in chat. Make sure you let us know where you're from, and take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I shouldn't call you Jorge because it's George. Thank you, George and CNCF for this opportunity. My name is Faisal. Last name is Afzal. I'm based out of San Diego with my wife and my 14-year-old who's soon to graduate and go to high school. Originally from Washington, D.C., and I am a CNCF and Platform Engineering Ambassador. I work for a company called Ahead as a principal technical consultant in the cloud native, platform engineering discipline areas. And let's see what else I can tell you about myself. Well, as I said, CNCF ambassador, so pretty much tune into all the CNCF projects, or as many as I can be. And today we're going to talk about a project, open source project that, believe it or not, I knew the downstream distro of it, but I did not know that the upstream it was OpenCost. So anyways, that being said, I do have a script, even though we're supposed to not know the product that we're discussing. We do have a script that we use to kind of run this type of an outreach and a demo. So that being said, OpenCost is the open source project, and I guess the way I approach learning anything, not just specific to cloud native projects, is to start first by asking what's in it for me and the business that I support, right? So if I'm working with customers in the industry, whether it's healthcare, um, financial services, otherwise, my first thing is to understand from the customer's perspective, what is it that they're trying to do? What is it that they're trying to achieve? And how do I support that business objective? Application supporting a business application or otherwise. So OpenCost, just without even doing any research, I can tell you that this is one of those pillars around, like cost management, and so it's pretty relevant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get started. Let's see, share screen, entire screen. So, okay. And by the way, before I get started, I just want to give a shameless shout out to Cloud Native Los Angeles. That's the chapter that I am supporting, managing, and helping grow. So for those of you who are interested, we have a event coming up tomorrow with ChainGuard and Adrian. So I'm actually going to put it in the private chat. Hopefully, George, you can pick it up. Okay, so the way I approach an open source project and trying to learn is by really starting by looking at the cloud native landscape and see if there's if the project exists. Most of the time, it does. So let's start with OpenCost, and it is cloud native landscape. For those of us old in the ecosystem, landscape is the page that we literally go to search for and find out at least a high level information about a project. So what that entails. And before I go any further, George, can you and the audience see my window, my screen?
Yep, you're looking good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. You're quiet there. You make me nervous a little bit. So do chime in every now and then. Let's see. So OpenCost, and there it is. There it was Kubecost. So I think I may have mentioned that we, as ambassadors, when we brought to this chat loop program, we're supposed to look at it from a lens of somebody who has never seen the project. And just wanted to, for transparency perspective, I kind of knew about Kubecost, but I did not know that it was the OpenCost upstream project that was being utilized. So just wanted to call that out. But anyways, as soon as you look at the ecosystem, the landscape, there are tons and tons of projects, and they're growing by leaps and bounds, right? So, but interesting that OpenCost comes up pretty quickly. So if I look at it right away, it says CNCF project, and it's incubating, right? And for those of us who have been in the ecosystem, you are either a sandbox, incubating, or you have graduated. So this project has some ways to go to graduate. But from just at a high level, it seems like it's also part of the tag observability, being kind of monitored there. Came out in 2022. So it focuses on observability and analysis and continuous optimization. So it's relevant for DevOps, platform engineering. The maturity started in June 17th. I'm assuming that that's the first time there was a commit. There seems to be a GitHub repo as well associated with it. It's under Apache license 2.0. It has almost 6,000 stars. A good, healthy number of contributors to this project. And the first commit, actually, I correct myself now. It was, even though it became a sandbox in June, the 17th of June in 2022, the first commit was actually on March 19th. And as I go through the card for this open source project, what I'm curious is, like, how busy is this project? Like, how many people are participating, commits, and so on and so forth. And I can see that it's been pretty consistent in terms of how much the participation has been on this project. So there seems to be a bit of an uptick here, but overall, it seems to be a very consistent project. A project that has been growing. The primary language being used is Go. There's some Just aspect of that, and obviously Dockerfile is part of it. Again, there seems to be some funding. It's a non-profit project. These are some of the things important, because you want a project, an open source project, to mature and be relevant for us, the techies, right, in the cloud native ecosystem. But then at the same time, we like to see where it's going as well. An open source project, oftentimes, whether it's Istio or any other project for that matter, including Argo, will have a downstream movement with. In the case of OpenCost, it's Kubecost. So we definitely want to see that there's funding behind it. There are folks that are helping kind of push the project, evolve it, and grow it. And so it seems like OpenCost is doing pretty much really good in all those areas. Oftentimes there's a page, a dedicated page for all the projects. But let's start with the GitHub. Let's see. Okay. All right, again, some of the same information that's here. Let's look at the high-level README. What does it solve? Your favorite open source cost monitoring tool for Kubernetes and cloud spend. That's pretty relevant. And ahead, almost all the customers that I talk to, cost is a pretty big deal, right? Like just yesterday, I was talking to a customer and we were discussing their DR strategy. And yes, they obviously are kind of looking between a pilot light versus hot, which is essentially having a DR ready to go with very minimal, if any, downtime. Cost is a huge part of it, right? So cost is relevant in containers and Kubernetes space, because at the core of it, you might have some VMs running, right? Your worker nodes. But there's pod sprawl, right? You have applications, they're deployed in pods. You may have, sidecar containers. So cost kind of becomes pretty relevant as you grow. And then you don't have just one environment, right? You have development, QA, stage, prod, production. So very soon, whether you use a cloud native or AWS native or Azure native solution, or you use, say, something like OpenShift or Tanzu, the cost of building that ecosystem is going to be pretty relevant. So this project seems to be doing well and seems to have a lot of following, and it has seems to have a pretty good downstream delivery mechanism as well. That tells me that it's well received. So there's a little bit of demo here on Kubecost. Let's see, the real-time cost allocation, multi-cloud cost monitoring. So obviously, if you're running, let's say, just take an example, at Tanzu or OpenShift on-prem, and then you extend the cluster to the cloud, whether you're using AWS, Azure, or Google. Essentially, what it's saying is you can do your cloud monitoring as well as your cloud-native container ecosystem monitoring. And gets a lot of other valuable information, especially if you're working with cloud service providers. There's asset pricing behind it, type of machines you're using, et cetera, et cetera. So that's good. It kind of covers all the well-architected framework pillars, including carbon cost for the cloud resources. So that's good to know that all 6 pillars are covered. Let's see. Cool. Awesome. So that's my first stop. Let's maybe look at the video.
Gonna go ahead and toss up that URL for Cloud Native LA.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love that. Thank you. So I can totally see, like, right away. I mean, some of us have used the UI tools, whether you use OpenShift or Tanzu. Kubernetes, great. They have their own monitoring. This is kind of making sense, right? I mean, in this case, we're looking at a cluster, a container cluster, a Kubernetes cluster. It's broken down by namespace over the last 7 days, and the currency chosen is US dollars. And it's kind of telling you, your cost, your spend based on and across namespaces, which is kind of relevant, right? Like, for example, if you got 3-4 different projects running in your ecosystem to support your business applications, you want to know where the spend is coming from the most. And in case, like, they've got Calico from a networking perspective, Prometheus, they've got OpenCost right there, namespace. They've got Tigera running as well. Okay, Calico Tigera. So essentially, it's kind of showing you over the course of the last 7 days where the spend is. So let's see what else this report gives us. Okay, good. There it is. Okay, so now a different view. This particular namespace of Cube system is okay. That's good to know. I mean, it's kind of understood that Cube system is running all the APIs and etcds and things like that. The Cube system is pretty busy in terms of resource utilization, and hence the biggest spend right now on this seems to be a very small cluster with a few namespaces, that most of the spend is coming from the Cube system namespace. So again, that does not surprise me at all. Okay. And again, I'm just very casually, informally looking at what the product offers, and if I were to install this, and we will, by the way, we'll try, as George said while we were discussing before the event, we hope to install and see in how we can maybe leverage it ourselves as well, because the objective is, as a solution architect, as a consultant, working with customers, the objective is to take it on a test drive, if you want to call it, right? Figure out its capabilities, understand the gaps between this and perhaps another open source project, and then identify what the business value is that this tool provides, right? Whether it's an open source or you end up leveraging a downstream commercial backed OpenCost versus Kubecost product. See, yeah, it's cost allocation. It further breaks down into CPUs, RAM, PBs and whatnot. So that's good to know. It provides a lot of detail. There it is, the cloud cost. So it seems to me that it's not just container, but cloud cost, as the project GitHub page was showing. Depending on, so in this particular case, the customer has integrated with AWS, GCP, and Azure. I'm assuming this video was created by OpenCost team, so obviously they wanted to show the value across multiple cloud service providers, and so in the context of a given cloud service provider, and I'm not going to go too far because we don't know what they're running on AWS on their container cluster, but it seems like the spend, the total cost is pretty high on AWS, GCP's too, and then obviously Azure. So depending on what other things from a cloud service provider, all the services they're using, it is definitely showing you an overall spend of this customer. By the way, any questions, George, that are rolling in? Feel free to engage and share here.
No questions yet, but feel free to pile them on, folks.
Awesome. All right, cool. So that's one. So that's coming from the GitHub page. We clicked on this link. I usually just start by doing an OpenCost. Is that what it is? Okay. And let's see. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna put this here. And George, can you still see my window and the Safari page?
Looking good.
George, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, looking good.
Okay, awesome. So the way I address learning any new open source project is just by kind of typing the name, whether in Google or just on the bar here. And it seems like there's a dedicated website. Not surprised. Seems to be a pretty popular project, open source cost monitoring for cloud native environment. We get it. There's a demo that we can probably see as well. So let's go towards the first thing I look at is, I like to just kind of run with things, right? So I want to just try it out and see, like, where is it applicable? Can I run it on my local machine? Which cloud service provider? So it's a neutral open source project, vendor neutral. So while Kubecost might be benefiting from it, everybody else in the community is more than welcome to take this project and utilize it as well. There's an installation guide. That's good to know. They have some use cases. They have already integrated with some of the main cloud service providers, actually all of them: Amazon, Microsoft, Azure, Google, even Oracle, and then on-premise. And it seems like Alibaba and Scaleway is coming up. We looked at this one already, so this seems to be a video.
Before you move on, we do have a question. Does it make sense to use this, or can you depend on Azure billing? Do we have any color on when you would extend the cloud provider's billing infrastructure to use this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? And that this is so there are multiple ways to look at it. And I'm not as familiar with Azure billing as much as I'm with AWS, but let's just stick with Azure. You definitely would probably complement. Now, I'm not sure if Azure billing goes beyond services. So let's say you've got compute, you've got storage. I'm sure that Azure billing will give you that data. Does Azure billing goes downstream towards a pod level, a namespace level? I'm going to assume, I'm going to go out on a hint and say they perhaps do, right? And you can leverage it. Where I would start thinking about using when I say a cloud native and not a cloud service provider native service, is what is your use case? I have customers that are in Azure as well as in AWS. And in fact, I have one customer that I'm talking to right now, and not specific to Kubecost or OpenCost. They have a pretty opinionated way of how they want to stand up tooling. So, for example, they don't want to get bogged down with CloudFormation or Bicep. They want to have a very agnostic upstream infrastructure as code option. So they're using Terraform. Downstream, they have a vision of using Ansible. So to answer your question, where the Azure billing is relevant, I would say as a business person, as well as a technical architect, as well as engineer, I would leverage whatever I could. But if there was a single source of truth, and if Azure billing was doing the job that what we're seeing so far OpenCost is doing, then I would stick with Azure billing, right? So if you are an all-in on Azure billing does everything that you need. Then perhaps you don't need to make that the spend on purchasing Kubecost downstream or building, right, OpenCost, because if you're using open source, that means you're the one managing it. It's not a SaaS-based offering, so you're going to have some aspect of your team dedicated towards managing OpenCost as well. And not to mention, you might have other tools as well. I hope that makes sense. I can do a follow-up as well. All right, let's see. So there seems to be, if I look here, there seems to be a CNCF Slack community. Obviously, hint, hint, because I am a CNCF ambassador and I am plugged in to CNCF ecosystem, and one of our primary ways to communicate with each other is through Slack. I'm going to bring up Slack and show you. So if I was more interested in this project and I wanted to spend more time, I would search for OpenCost. Oh, there it is. As a channel dedicated to it, as the page says. So let's go to the channel. I'm not a member. Let's become a member. Join the channel. Okay, seems like somewhat of a busy channel where people are discussing the project and their needs and how OpenCost addresses it, which is great. So if I was more interested, or if I ran into issues, oftentimes, like I'm a member of the HTO. Oftentimes, when you have issues and challenges with an open source project, whether you're installing it, whether you're trying to just kick the tires, or trying to learn more things about it, or you run into an issue, you will find the contributors, the owners of the project, to be part of these channels. So in this case, if you ran it, and we'll try to run it today. If you run into any issues, I can just come here and say, hey, I was live blogging with George, and we ran into some issue, and I'm sure somebody will jump in and assist. So that's that. And then obviously they have their email. It seems like it says .vnet.ibm. So it's interesting that it says .ibm. I'm trying to figure out if there's a major vendor behind this project called IBM. So we'll see if we can find that. Maybe I'll just do a quick search. I mean, I'm always curious to see who is behind a project. So is OpenCost an IBM initiative? See. No, it's not, but it's an open source project which we knew. Well, it was interesting to see the IBM email address there, so I wasn't sure. Let's see. So let's go back into a UI. If I wanted to install it, installation guide here, OpenCost setup. So it says it supports all the main cloud service providers, Docker, no Kubernetes support on premises. But I'm just thinking, what if I have a Minikube or Kind cluster, and if I were trying to Kubecost. Okay, so it's saying if you do install it, you can port forward it. Probably a good sign that somebody with Kind cluster may have tried to install it and also wanted to do a port forwarding. That's fine. Q1 install. Okay, and it seems like Helm is also available. Let's see what else is there. Okay, so what are the requirements for it, right? So if I look at the requirements, it says OpenCost requires a Kubernetes cluster. Okay, it doesn't say whether it has to be EKS, whether it has to be EKS, AKS, GKS. Kubernetes cluster to Kubernetes cluster. So we'll try to attempt using a kind cluster. And again, this is a very typical of a cloud native engineer, an architect, somebody who is trying to kick the tires around an open source project or otherwise to leverage their local machine and just see how far along they can go before they have to maybe go to the cloud, stand up infrastructure and try it out. There's always a cost involved with it, whether you are turning out an EC2 instance and deploying your Kubernetes cluster on it, even if it's a single node or you're using EKS. So with that being said, let's jump into so it's a project. By the way, I created a folder on my local machine in the anticipation that I'm going to have to maybe try out the project. So let's give it a try. Kind. I'm going to use kind, which is again, and by the way, talking about kind and CNCF landscape. I think one of my peers may have talked about a kind cluster on one of these chat loopbacks. So I see if kind is an open source project. Kind. K3S. So K3S is kind. Yep, there it is. Just want to quickly look at that. Dedicated towards platform engineers, Kubernetes installers. I have a feeling that kind was gifted to the open source community. George, you might know this. I think you may have a connection with VMware too from your past. I think kind was probably gifted by the VMware team, if I'm not mistaken.
I think this one was Google. This came out.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I'm gonna go look that up. But we do have a question.
Okay, sure.
Would you say this is a solution for a dev team without cloud access, but still interested to learn about the cost/billing? I think that's a great question.
Okay, can you rephrase it one more time, George?
Sure. Let me slow down here. Would you say this is a solution for a dev team without cloud access, but still interested to learn about cost and billing?
Great question. So let's go back to the project page, right? And yes, even if you were not, like the first thing first, like even if you're a dev, so let's take it from two different angles, right? We're talking about cost, all-inclusive, holistic approach, right? Just because you're a dev team may not be leveraging cloud on day-to-day basis. Maybe you've got a local environment. Maybe you have been given some space in your on-prem environment. It's still very relevant, right? Because you may deploy an application. You may deploy it on a namespace inside a cluster. And if you are doing these things, you still need to understand the performance. You still need to understand the resource utilization, because you're going to have to write a page before you submit it to your platform engineers or other DevOps team to say, hey, deploy my app, right? They will need to know how much resources to carve out, how many pods to run, so on and so forth. So if I think I get the question right, yes, it is very relevant. If anything, if you are a developer, your wiki page, right, your product page should address, hey, by the way, I did some due diligence at a high level, whether you ran top, right, on your local Linux prompt, or you installed Kubecost in your Minikube or kind cluster. You can say, I ran this application that I would like to deploy into a development environment, and when I ran it, it showed me here. I think it was here somewhere, like the video shows here, I think, overview. Like in this video, right? Like it shows, hey, by the way, I installed this application, and it was running on, let's say Prometheus. It was running in a Prometheus namespace, and that was the spend, or at least that's the resource utilization I was expecting. That just gives your platform engineering and other teams a heads up on what the type of resources it might be utilizing. So yes, it is relevant, even if you're a developer, even if you're just doing work on your local machine, or you're not in the cloud, but you're in the on-prem environment. Cost is still relevant, even for on-prem. So just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay, now that we satisfy the curiosity around whether kind was given to was gifted to open source from VMware or Google. Let me see if I can bring up my Okay. So again, this is just my local machine, my MacBook issued by a head. And so I'm going to create a cluster. Let's call it OpenCost because that's the project we're trying to run on. So this will create a, if I don't give it a YAML file, right? If I'm not being opinionated on what my kind or Minikube cluster looks like, it'll just create a one node all-inclusive cluster. So if I do a kubectl get, and by the way, if you were in, if you haven't done this before, in order for you to run kind, you have to install kind, but then you also have to have Docker desktop running. So there's your Docker desktop, and happy to show that as well. Yep. So there's that. My cluster it's called. I gave it a name OpenCost, and it just appended that to the name of the control plane, and that's what it is. So let's do a quick run here. Kubernetes K pods. Okay, I think it is dash all. I'm forgetting namespace. This is okay. There it is. I can see that these are the namespaces. These are the pods that are running across all the namespaces right now. Okay, so that's good. Why did I do that? Because I'm assuming that this will be deployed as a daemon set, which is essentially as many nodes I have in a cluster will get deployed on all those nodes. So it's probably going to have its own namespace dedicated to it. Let's see. Okay. So the requirement is, again, Kubernetes cluster, which we just installed, and then it says Prometheus. So let's see, it says Prometheus. Okay, Prometheus requirement. I think most of us are aware of the Prometheus and its ability to scrap matrix and also use for data storage. By the way, that's another conversation for another day. If you were interested in another open source project like Prometheus, the pros and cons of installing Prometheus, the benefits, as well as the toil that you're going to have to manage, because it talks about data storage, right? So you might be using Datadog or something else. Again, for another day. There's an Helm chart for that one to install. Prometheus, it doesn't say that it's specific to any specific cluster type. So we're going to assume that just because we have a Kubernetes cluster, if we run this, it should install. Let's see. So it's saying essentially that it is going to go ahead and create, oops, just went by, and it's going to create a namespace called Prometheus system, and then it's going to essentially install that there. So if I were to do another update on pods, and if I were just to do a against the namespace, and Jorge, how are we doing on the time? Okay.
33. So you have
Okay.
about 20 minutes left.
Okay, good. Again, so just going through step by step, like going through the requirements, making sure that we meet those requirements. Requirement first was Kubernetes cluster. We have installed thanks to kind. You can, I don't see an issue using Minikube or anything else that will also give you the same results. Prometheus is required for scraping matrix. We understand that OpenCost is going to use Prometheus to pick up those matrix and show us some visibility into it. So that's done. Managing with Helm. Okay, so there it is with Helm. So if we now want to install this project, it would be adding the repo, updating it. So let's do that. Okay. So while that is happening, okay, Helm install. Okay. So there's values file. Okay, we can see. So now in order for you to install and create a namespace called OpenCost. So let's go ahead and create a namespace, kubectl, create a namespace, OpenCost. Okay. Okay, awesome. And then there's this values file. So there's an example let's look at an example value file. Okay. All right, I'm just kind of looking at what value the example file provides. Okay. Awesome. OpenShift, platforms.
I am learning the entire Git history of kind, by the way, just to
Oh,
let
is
you
that
know I'm
right?
working. Yeah,
What
yeah,
what
it's
did
actually
what
very
did you
interesting.
learn?
I will tell you at the end after this.
Okay. 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 So OpenCost. Setting up environment. Okay, so there's the local host. I'm just trying to find a plug and playable OpenCost file that we can use. OpenCost. Okay, there it is. So it will actually create a namespace as well. I didn't have to create a namespace. So again, I'm just going through the project site. I didn't have to create a namespace. In this case, I'm just saying, hey, look, I want you to utilize the OpenCost YAML and install that. So now if I do a kubectl on namespace, I see that OpenCost has its own dedicated namespace, which is updated. Let's see, kubectl get on, get po-n OpenCost. Okay, so it seems like, ooh, image pull. Oh, I think I know what's happening here. So on my work machine, we are running a Zscaler, and it's probably having issues with pulling down the images. This is a known issue for those of us that run Zscaler because of our work machine. So let me just turn that off for a demo. For those wondering and understand Zscaler and its implication of turning it off, shouldn't be a fireable offense. So it should be okay. Okay, unchanged.
Whoa, we all got kicked out. 1 second. There we go.
We all got kicked out from the session.
Yep. Oh no, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, this is exactly what happens with the demo. Okay. Let's check this and see what's in this YAML file. Okay. Pretty typical namespace, service account, cluster roles. Those who had to manage roles for the teams as well as for the entire cluster, binding to the service account, deployment. Okay. All right, so there's nothing out there. Okay, well, let's see what else we can find on the project. Before I go away, I just want to check one more time. Oh, it's running now. Okay, good. Maybe it was just a slight delay. Okay, that's good. Let's see, what else can we do before we try attempting? We also have to do a port forwarding on it. Pretty standard. It runs on 9003. Let's see. There was a port forwarding that I can copy paste. Let's see here on premises. We did that. We already installed it, so we don't need that. That's done. Integration. Oh, by the way, there's integration for Backstage for those of us who are in platform engineering and IDP. There seems to be an integration for that in the platform engineering IDP ecosystem. I bet you if I'm going to try it just as is, it's not going to work. So open UI. Okay. This is fun. Nothing like being put on the spot to try to do it in front of other people. Okay. I'm just going to search the website if I don't see it this time. Is there a search function? Search function. Huh. Okay, there it is. I knew I'd seen it somewhere on the site. So if I were to run it now, it probably won't come up. Yeah. So let's try to do a port forwarding. Then try. Oh yeah. Look at that. So so if you did not have access to AWS or you didn't want to, run a Terraform job, even though you can destroy, right? Apply and destroy, and you don't want to set up your VPC, subnets, and then deploy a machine or use EKS or AKS. You can certainly run it on your local machine. That's the beauty of most of the open source projects, where you can literally install and run from anywhere. So in this case, as the project claims, as long as you have a Kubernetes cluster, even on Docker, you can run it. So it seems like it is showing some of the values, some of the information that we were expecting just based on the documentation. So in this case, it's saying, hey, look, you've got this cluster that's running all these various namespaces. There's Kube System, there's OpenCost, Prometheus, which is a requirement for this project. So it can do the scraping and get you the matrix, and it'll store the data as well for you. So yeah, it seems like if I was a business and I was going through a line item to say, okay, as a manager of a dev team, if they're leveraging n number of products in the container ecosystem, where's the biggest cost coming from? Also, as a developer or somebody who is an architect taking it to the architectural review board, you can start to make sense as you play with this product a bit more, send traffic to your cluster to find out a bit more detail. So there's this cloud cost, but obviously I'm not connected to the cloud or any cloud provider, but if I integrated it past the keys, it would show me the cloud cost provider information as well. So the underlying, I'm assuming that the underlying ecosystem components like the compute, storage, networking, it will probably show you the cost here. If this was, maybe we can do a follow-up on just the cloud cost, George. Maybe pick one of the cloud service providers. Let's see. Yeah, this looks good. What else can we do? So we can kind of see the value here of the tool. It slices and dices across cluster. So just the overall cluster, there's one cluster running. It'll show on the node level. I only have one OpenCost control plane running. So if there were multiple nodes running here, it will divvy up and give you the utilization, efficiency, and cost overall. We already looked at the namespace. If you had a bunch of daemon sets running, it would only report on those daemon sets and give you an information just on the deployments based on those daemon sets. It can also tell you about jobs and services. There should be at least some, like the kubedns. Okay, good. Stateful sets. And then this is just based on pods. I bet you that if you look at the pod, Prometheus pod will probably be the highest one. Let's see if I am wrong. API server. Okay, controller manager, total. Where's the cost? Huh. Interesting. So no one single pod has really a spend that it shows, which is fine because it's only been running for a little bit. Okay, what else can we do? Another way, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, one of the biggest ways that I do learning is going to YouTube and let's see, search for OpenCost. And you know what, we should also look at Kubecost to see what the differences are. Oh, there it is, the event. Awesome. So this event is being played live on YouTube. Let's see. So OpenCost, Kubernetes cost monitoring deep dive. So there's one from Matt Ray. I guess he's part of the Kubecost team. OpenCost deep dive. So like if I was learning for the first time, or let's say if I were to invite somebody from Kubecost over to Cloud Native Los Angeles to do a demo for us or have a conversation, right? To understand the benefits, the business value to the business, I would probably go through these videos as well. There's another one that kind of shows how you can track costs in Kubernetes using OpenCost. Let's see, OpenCost open source project for okay. Let's see, OpenCost versus, how about we do a search on OpenCost versus Kubecost. Be mindful that a lot of open source projects are a great start, but then if you are an enterprise level organization and you need more support, maybe a SaaS-based implementation, maybe you need some additional either support or features that may not be offered by the open source project. There's FTO that kind of talks about Kubecost versus OpenCost. There's Reddit item here. Another one that I look at is I look for articles in Medium as well. So let's see if there's anything on Medium. Oftentimes peers have gone through and done a really good due diligence. So let's look at this article from Cloud Zero, as long as it's not behind the paywall. It talks about what Kubecost does. It's a tool for monitoring and optimizing Kubernetes costs. We get that, thank you. Visualizes this, yes, we have seen that value. Real-time cost data, absolutely, we understand that. Kubecost, so that was OpenCost, right? So that's just open up, but what does Kubecost does that maybe OpenCost does not do? So there's some features of Kubecost that OpenCost takes and complements and adds more to it. So it's a product versus project. Kubecost is an actual product, whereas OpenCost is a project. Hence, we are talking about it today as an open source project. What else? So somebody has done a really good write-up. I'll share this link here with, if I know how to share. Okay, I do not know how to share on this platform. I'll share later at the end of the demo. So it kind of tells you how you can install. We kind of went through it together, right? We did the Helm install for Prometheus, pricing. Okay, so for the business, that's the cost, $449 for 100 nodes. So let's say if you are running 100 nodes, whether in Azure or AWS or on-prem, this is what your cost structure may look like based on some of these criterias. So some of the things that the free tier provides, and then business complements on top of it more. There is 30 days metric. So if the one that I'm running right now, right here, it only will retain about 15 days worth of data. It'll cut off at that point. That's just the nature of the open source offering. It allows you to look at the cost monitoring, but here it also allows you to save reports. Now, why there's a value, right? There's a value because you might be building reports and sharing with your leadership to ensure that you have proper funding for next year, the year after, as well as, like how much other support do you need, like from a resource perspective. So outage risk assessment, it provides that in the business account. And then enterprise, it's got other things, like it does SAML integration, it has some custom integration. Obviously, you can get, you can request features, I'm assuming, as part of your enterprise deal, and a multi-cluster. So it's like, for example, individual clusters, yes, but not multi-clusters. If I was running like multiple clusters, it'll probably not allow me. It will allow me to just focus on one cluster at a time. So there are your limitations. Let's see, it gives you hourly cost per GPU, total node cost per hours. Yeah, and any questions, by the way, as I'm just rambling through here, George?
Sorry, struggling with the UI here. One sec.
No worries.
Matthias, I hope I get that right. Ask question just to clarify: does OpenCost has a retention limit for the data?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's what it was right here, Matthew. Good question. I think it does. It allows you to retain your matrix for about 15 days. I'm just trying to figure out why would that not be addressed. I think it just kind of enforces a 15-day metric. I mean, Prometheus is collecting that data, right, as well. So it's there, but I think it cuts off at 15 days. So if I were to go here, let me see, last 7 days. Yeah, last 14 days. Yep, there it is. Matthew, there's your answer right now. If we were to just install it and just play with it, it's like 14 days. And then if you want something beyond, like I think it may go up to 15 days, and that's it. So there's your answer to that question. Cost monitoring and reporting. What else? Okay, OpenCost does not support EKS on ECS or AWS Fargate. So there are limitations. If you're running, if you're running Fargate, right, and you probably won't get a support on that. So if you are like running Fargate and you got your own ecosystem, it probably will limit you in what you can see. It does not provide custom cost saving recommendation. So it also does not provide custom cost savings recommendation. So you can build a custom cost saving model that it will alert against. Governance wise, it's still forming its governance model. It aligns to best practices. So yeah, if you're very security centric, and I have customers, right, like at Ahead, and even when I was at HashiCorp, like we have customers like in financial sector, right? They will probably never use open source just because of the security and compliance nature of their business. That could be one thing. The other thing could be they are not going to use it because they want a SaaS-based model. They don't want team to be to be kind of spending their time managing, let's say, a Prometheus instance or whatnot, right? So those are a couple of reasons why open source, even if open source was an option, let's say beyond 15-day retention, it probably won't work. But that being said, for the techie in you, for the architect in you, if you were kicking the tires, this would provide you sufficient amount of details to say, do I want to pursue this product further? Do I want to pursue this product as a downstream commercial bet? And if yes, then you would start. And by the way, we didn't look at, let me just go back and look at something else. So I'll review OpenCost. Looking at enterprise. So there's enterprise here. So it says making cloud costs visible. Yep, so there it is. The first solution that it kind of talks out is Kubecost, because that's probably one of the main beneficiaries of this open source project, Kubecost Enterprise. The team probably behind OpenCost is leveraging it to promote their downstream commercial back product called Kubecost, but then there's Rendoli that also leverages. So there's another downstream commercial that product. They do cost alerting with it, chargeback reports, cost visibility, and then obviously Kubecost is just at a different level. They're doing a lot of custom integration, multi-cluster view, et cetera, et cetera. So this was a this is a good one to call out. So if you try out OpenCost and you're interested, but you need an enterprise type solution, and by the way, they provide dedicated support as well, then Kubecost is your is between Kubecost and Rendoli. Those are your options. What is the tutorial? We kind of bypassed the tutorial. Oh, okay. So there's
you got about
and by
2
the way,
minutes left. Sorry,
is
you
that
were
right?
going.
Okay,
I didn't want to interrupt you.
okay, sorry, my bad. I'm gonna stop. How do I stop sharing? It's like Hotel California. You can check in whenever you want, but you can check out. Okay, can't leave. Have I stopped sharing now?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, I mean, any questions? I know I kind of rambled on and on and on. But
Someone asked if you could drop some beats, but I don't think we have time for that.
yeah, so that's a good call out. You know what? On the next program, George, I will make sure that I put it on my wife's calendar not to have any meetings. My wife and I, we both work from home together. So I have an interesting story. I know we've got a minute left or so. I played drums for a customer. I kid you not. She was working downstairs and my screen goes alive. I'm getting messages from she's saying, "Are you working today? Because why are you playing drums? I've got a call and your noise is bleeding into my call." So
That's amazing.
but
It's a
yes,
cloud
let's
native
do that.
drumming.
So let's do this next time when we connect, George. Let's
Yeah.
do a quick drumming session as well before we kick
Yeah.
off the event.
So Kubernetes and Docker, the tool that we were locking earlier, actually grew out of Kubernetes itself from the infrastructure team.
Oh,
So
really?
the affiliation I associate with it is Google, because Bed the
Google.
Elder
Yeah,
is kind of like the
yeah,
most
yeah,
public of the
yeah,
ones. But that whole, I just
yeah.
went looking through the game. I saw a bunch of people in there bringing up a bunch of old memories. So that's
Oh, nice, nice, nice.
Munners is in
Cool.
there and everything. Yeah. So yeah. All right. With that, thanks everyone for coming. We'll be here next week, and I'll give you the final word then, sir, and then we'll call it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate it. I appreciate this opportunity. I hope my rambling was helpful. I'm a CNCF ambassador like George. I manage and lead the Cloud Native Los Angeles. If you guys joined today and are interested in additional events that are supported by Cloud Native Computing Foundation, there's a link right there that George shared for the community.cncf.io for Los Angeles. Would love for you to connect with us and join our community as well. Thank you, George, Cloud Native community, and I know Audra's not here, but thank you, all three of you, for supporting and having me over. I had a blast. I hope you guys did too.
Yeah, that was fun. And with that, thanks everyone. Make sure to